Thank you very much. And welcome, Vikas, to this Renewables Hotline. Welcome. Thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thanks a lot. Pleasure is all mine.
So, okay, guys, I wanted to bring you this interview because I think Vikas is one of the most remarkable people that you're going to meet in the solar industry today. And the reason why is because he's actually the head of business development for Sterling and Wilson, which is today the largest solar EPC, and is present pretty much in all continents. You know, they are doing projects in all of the major solar markets. But this was not the case only 6 years ago. Only 6 years ago, Sterling and Wilson was a small EPC that didn't even hear what solar was. So it was a big change that happened really quickly. And we're going to hear from one of the guys that made this all happen. It was very, very fundamental in all of this really rapid change and this development of the company. So because the first question I'm going to ask is, how did you get into solar? You know, what brought you here essentially?
All right. Thanks a lot for having me here. So it's a long story. I will try and break this entire story into two parts. So Sterling and Wilson started doing solar projects in India in 2010-11, and for about 3 to 4 years, we were only focusing on India, and we became the largest solar EPC in India by 2013-14. 13-14 was the time when we decided to go international, and we started taking baby steps, and we were I would say lucky that we got our first break rather early. We got a 90 megawatt in South Africa, and the way we got this 90 megawatt is a story in itself. We didn't go to South Africa. I was in Saudi Arabia along with some of my other colleagues, and we met a gentleman who was from South Africa, and he was looking to work with EPCs to build his 90 megawatt, and that was the starting point. It took us a year to start that project in a very complicated market like South Africa, but that was a starting. After that, we got opportunities in Philippines, and the main turning point, I would say, for the company was Egypt, wherein we got 6 or 7 projects in 2017. And that was a time when we all thought that our original hypothesis, which was that Sterling and Wilson is a bankable company with a bankable parent. We know solar. We had track record in India and then in South Africa, and we thought we can make it big. We thought we will be able to become one of the large potent forces in this industry. And with this vision, we really started expanding our wings. Not only Middle East, Africa, we started looking at at everything, probably minus of China. And as we speak today, we are present in more than 20 countries. We have built plants in almost 19 countries right now, and we are one of the largest solar players in Australia. We are very large in Chile, and as we speak, we are expanding rapidly in US as well as Europe. So it has been a long journey, and in the journey from a private company, we went public in 2019, and I can only say that the markets are growing. Sterling and Wilson is expanding rapidly, and I see that in the next 10 years, Sterling and Wilson would still be one of the largest companies around, and we would be doing a lot of interesting things in the solar space.
And how about you, Vikas? We heard about Sterling and Wilson, and of course, you've grown with Sterling and Wilson. You've been there for a long time. But how did you get to be in solar? I mean, what attracted you to this specific industry?
So, very interesting story. So after I did my management course, I joined ABB. For a year and a half, I was in ABB, and I was doing strategy for ABB. And since I was doing strategy, I had I would say, privilege to look into a lot of technologies which ABB was working on. And ABB being a global behemoth, they were working on a lot of new things and a lot of things in the power industry, in the energy sector, which I was not familiar with. So ABB gave me an opportunity to learn a lot about the entire energy sector. And while I was doing my evaluation on a lot of things, I stumbled upon solar. There was one conference in 2010. It was a conference cum exhibition. I had an opportunity to be there, for 3 days, and those 3 days, I would say, that absolutely changed the way I looked at my career. I thought I need to be in this industry for a long time. It was 2010. Solar was just taking baby steps in India, although solar was big in Europe, but in India, it was, I would say, it was the first or the second year of the entire large scale industry. Previous to this, people only spoke about 50 or 100 kilowatt projects. So that was the time I came back. I told my boss that I want to work in this sector. I don't want to do strategy and I don't want to be journalist. And somehow I was able to cajole him and persuade him, and he said yes. And so I started my journey in solar. I was there in ABB for, after this happened, for another 1 year, and we did a lot of interesting things. But after a few months, I realized that if I really want to do something in this field, I need to work with people who are very, very bullish on this sector. ABB was bullish, but for them it was one of the things. I wanted to work with somebody, for whom solar would be more important. I had few opportunities. I stumbled upon again Sterling and Wilson. Sterling and Wilson then was the largest. Even today, they are the largest MEP, electrical contractors. And I thought Sterling and Wilson has all the right ingredients to move from MEP into solar. And Sterling and Wilson already took few steps, and they already had a couple of plants which they were doing. And then I would say in terms of revenues, the solar revenues would be, when I joined, would be not more than 10 or $15 million. That was a time when I was among the first few people who had joined in the team, and rest of the teams were from other divisions, and we started our journey then. And then India for 3 years, then the international, and here we are talking about this entire journey.
It's amazing. You are very good at negotiating, and cajoling. So it's paid well for you from the beginning, first in choosing your career and, convincing your boss to go for it. And then also with all of the milestones that you've reached in Sterling and Wilson. And I wanted to ask you about how you have seen the renewable energy industry change since the time you've started. And they were, the first projects were kilowatts, essentially, to now. What are the major milestones that you've seen?
So I would break this entire thing into two parts, two buckets. The first bucket is 2011 to 16, when everything depended on the government subsidies. We depended a lot on the government programs, and solar obviously was expensive. It was scaling rapidly, but it was still an expensive source of power. Everybody used to talk about grid parity, and everybody thought grid parity is going to be the holy grail for the expansion of solar. And we are all lucky that solar was on a very high learning curve. On an average, solar was on 18% learning curve, which means for every doubling of the capacity, the solar cost came down by 18 to 20%. And 2016-17 was a time when we all realized that grid parity is there. Obviously, it was not one moment. Every country had their own moments. But from 2000, I would say 16-17 to not till now, 2020, everybody achieved grid parity at a generation level. And solar exploded in almost every part of the world, including US. China has been a big proponent of solar. And now there is no more debate on whether it is commercially viable or no without any subsidies. I think the debate now has shifted. How can you make this power more dispatchable? And already in 2021, starting of a new decade in a way, I could already see a lot of new business cases. And I think for the next 5 to 10 years, this entire dispatchability theme will also fade away. In a few years, we would know that solar is dispatchable, and I think then the question would be how fast we can scale this entire thing up. So yeah, this is the way I think the industry is growing, and it has been an absolute pleasure to be a part of this industry for the last 10 years.
It's been very exciting for sure. And we're changing the world, right? So it's always nice to be a part of something, a force for good, really. So what are you building right now? Because I know that you guys have a lot of projects in parallel in many different places.
Right. So right now we are building in many countries. Let me give you some perspective. We are building more than 600 megawatts in Australia. We are building more than 300 megawatts in Chile. We are building a plant in Jordan. We just finished a large plant in Oman, and we are building right now 200 megawatt in US. So very happy to share that. We are spread all over, but I would also like to add one important point here. It took us almost 5 years to spread to all of these countries. US we started in 2018, and it took us almost 3 years to scale up. Australia, we were looking at the market for almost 3 years, 2016, 17, 18. There was a lot of pressure on me and my team to enter the market, but we thought this is not the right time. And we waited and we entered properly in 2019, and we were proven right. There were a lot of players who could not survive those years in Australia. So yeah, so we are expanding, and we were able to choose our geographies carefully. We were able to time our entries mostly rightly. There is only one market where I think we should have gone a bit earlier. We were delayed by almost 2 years, which is US. We entered that market in 2018. I feel that we should have entered that market in 2016 when we were going global, because US being a large mature market, it becomes difficult every year for the new players to come in and make a mark on that market. So yeah, but by and large, it has been a satisfying journey. And right now, as we speak, we are expanding very, very heavily in Europe. We have opened a new office in Seville. That will be our headquarters for our European region. We are building new teams. It is very, very exciting time for everybody to be in Europe, and we are lucky that we have been able to assemble a very nice competitive team in Spain. And in the near future, I'm sure you will hear a lot about Sterling and Wilson, the activities in Europe.
For sure. And I mean, Seville is such a great place to live as well, from where to head those operations. So I approve. It's a great decision in my eyes. It's a lot going to be happening in Europe for sure. What about this last year? Has not been all that easy, has it? Considering what's going on with COVID. So how have you guys dealt with COVID challenges, and has it been very different in different places?
So, again, three parts to this. One, in terms of business acquisition, since we are there in the market for a long time, even without meeting a lot of people face to face, we were able to sign new deals almost all over the world. So that worked out fine. But when it comes to the plant construction, obviously we saw some delays. The supply chains were absolutely constrained. Uh, the good part is, now, after having gone through all of that, suffering and pain, we all know that the supply chains have to become more robust moving forward. Everything cannot be done from one country. There has to be some amount of diversification, which should happen. And the good news is, almost all of our customers, they have also understood this point. And everybody nowadays, all the new discussions, everybody brings in a point about the resilience of the supply chain and how would you manage such situations. From that perspective, it has been a good learning, and obviously all the learning comes from some amount of pain. When it comes to the plant operation and maintenance, Sterling and Wilson is, I think, third largest plant operator. We are maintaining more than 7 gigawatt assets all over the world, and I feel so proud of our teams. We were able to maintain all the plants properly. People were in the plants braving, this tough conditions. Obviously, taking all the precautions. So we did not see disruption on that side of the business. But I can only tell you, it came. People had to really step up, and they had to do a lot of innovative things to ensure that they stay safe. At the same time, they run the plants safely.
It must have been challenging for you personally too. Like there was no traveling. I know that you used to live on a plane, so the change to like just see people telematically must have been quite tough.
Yeah. So in the beginning, yes, it was tough. I really like to meet people face to face. Overall, since we were in a pandemic, everybody was in a very different frame of mind. So everybody, I would say, lowered their guards, and people preferred meeting online. But now, just imagine, after 1 year, I think 50% travel could still be avoided without impacting on anything. You can do still a lot of things, the way we are talking now, over the internet. I think this is going to be a part of our life moving forward. And from the carbon emission perspective, I think it's a good thing. We would be traveling less. We would be emitting less carbon. So overall, it is good for the planet.
Look at that, yeah. How bad things sometimes get wrapped in some lessons that we need to hear, I suppose. So okay, so for a very very long time, the renewables was like a sort of like a supply-led industry, if you like. We were like trying to put it out there. When it was very expensive, governments created tariffs in order to bridge the gap between the cost of the technology and the cost of fossil fuel energy. But this has changed immensely in the past few years, and it kind of flipped us around completely. I mean, we're now when I say we, I mean solar, photovoltaics, and even wind. Is the cheapest form of renewable energy. However, that doesn't come without challenges because it's variable renewables. So as we have more and more of them in the system, the reality is that it's also harder for the system to manage, and we need to be thinking about other technologies that we can use to bridge that gap. So what I want to hear is, what is your strategy for your company, for Sterling and Wilson, in the next 2-3 years? Where do you see the opportunities for growth, and where essentially you're investing your resources, which I usually explain as your time, your attention, and your money, essentially? What main technologies, what main markets, whatever it is. So where are
Yeah.
you focusing?
On the technology side, there is a shift happening in the market. We are moving towards automation. We are moving towards more data analysis. We can call it AI or machine learning, but essentially we want to analyze more data so that the plants can perform better. There is some automation on the construction side. This is all happening at a rapid pace, and Sterling and Wilson, being the leading company, and we have always been very very innovative. The way we adopted robots, the way we are doing our plants now, they are much different than the way we used to do them before. So definitely, we're taking steps on that side. When it comes to the market, Europe is a big focus now. The entire market absolutely opened up almost, I would say, 2 years back. 2019 was the time when Europe embraced solar and wind back. And next 5 years are going to see an explosive growth in Europe. And Sterling and Wilson is spending a lot of time building capabilities. We want to maintain our plants for 20 years, 25 years in Europe. We want to build our substations there. We obviously want to build PV plants. We are developing projects, which has not traditionally been our model. Normally, we only do the EPC, but for Europe, we want to develop the projects till the RTB stage, ready to build stage, and then we want to sell it to our end customers. So a lot of things happening there. Then we are spending a lot of time in US. Again, after the government change, there is a lot of activity in the market anyway was very very robust, but now it has gone to a different level. And with ITC extension, which also came last year, the market is only going to become bigger. So these are the two markets wherein now we are spending a lot of time. For the rest of the markets, for example, Australia, we are already the largest in Australia. We would like to retain our position. We are developing capabilities there, and we are building a lot of megawatts in that country. At the same time, I would also like to add that we have traditionally been the largest EPC in India for the last 8 years now, approximately, and we would really like to retain that. That India is a place wherein we have a lot of talent base, and we really want to keep our pole position in that market for the next few years.
Hey, I think it's a very good policy, because considering just how large the market in India is as well, it's always good to make sure that you have a leading in a pole position there, and also of course the talent and everything else that India can benefit from. So the next question is about your clients. I mean, when talking to them, when working with them, you guys work really closely with them. It's almost like you become one team for a while, during construction. So what are usually the challenges that they face, and how do you help them solve them?
Yeah. So right now, if you look at any part of the globe, everybody has a lot of pressure on making the returns, right? With a lot of money which is available, the opportunities are still there, but opportunities are still limited. So you can imagine you have a lot of capital chasing a limited number of opportunities, which are growing, but maybe not growing as fast as of now. So our job is to always ensure that we design the plants, we construct the plants in a way which helps our customers to achieve the lowest cost of electricity, the lowest levelized cost of electricity. This is what we are striving for. And when you talk about LCOE, there are 4 or 5 drivers for that. Obviously, cost of capital is one driver which we don't control, but the rest of the drivers in terms of the plant operations, we can run the plants for 25 years. We can do it really well, and we can do it really competitively. We can really build and design the plants which are able to produce every possible electricity the plant should generate we are able to extract it out of the plant. That's the way we like to look at it. So we are really helping our customers in that. That's one part. Second, building solar farms, it's a risky proposition, right? You go into a new country, you're working on a large parcel of land, you are interacting with local communities. So when people like Sterling and Wilson, they take the contracts, a lot of risk has been transferred from our end customers to us, because this is what we are good at. We are good at entering new countries, evaluating them properly from all perspectives, and then delivering the plants, as per required quality, keeping all the HSE conditions in mind. So this is one very very big value which players, we and some of our peers, we bring on the table. And you would have seen a lot of plants in the world, sometimes they are not constructed, and people end up not delaying the plant so much that they don't come online, or they don't perform the way they should have performed. So, and if you look at solar, the entire game is about your plant performing same or more than what you anticipated for 25 years, which is a long time. So these are the few things we work with customers. Plus, since we are the only, I would say, we are the only real global EPC. Nobody else is there in all the countries. We work with a lot of key customers who are also global like us. So it gives them, so for them it's very easy. They want to work in Australia, Sterling and Wilson. They want to work in US, we are there. They want to work in India, and we have such customers who are working with us in more than 3 geographies, which is amazing. So their cost of transacting, their cost of diligence comes down, because they can keep on working with Sterling and Wilson in almost every part of the world.
I have to say, it's really truly amazing. For EPC companies that are usually large infrastructure companies that are kind of like to work on very sort of steady, slow approaches, very little change. Not very flexible. Like to see the ingenuity that was brought together this company that is like fast paced, adaptable, flexible, like customer centered. It's kind of like seeing like the new world in an old company, sort of, if that makes sense. So it's actually, I feel very inspired by this, the history of Sterling and Wilson, and by what you and your team have achieved. Actually, I just want to say this, here in the middle, because every time I hear the story, I mean, in 6 years, it's truly remarkable. My next question is about regulation, and you guys work in so many countries that it's very very changing and very different. It feels like we're almost like at different cycles in different places. The industry has kind of kept alive through the last decade in little cycles in different places, so the question really is the regulatory systems or the frameworks supporting the necessary growth for solar, the amount of deployment that we need to get to the climate change goals? And it's really not a closed and open question. It's not for you to say yes, it's for you to explain how this is happening and whether this is happening.
So solar has been growing at the rate of around 20% over the last 5 years. Is that enough? I'll just add some numbers to it. So right now, the total emissions, the annual emissions are around 32 billion tons. And and these 32 billion tons, if you convert this into oil equivalents, it will be around 14,000 million tons of oil equivalent. So this is what we emit when we travel. We emit when we whatever we do, we are emitting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So now, if somebody has to offset this entirely, which is the goal, right? The goal is to offset the entire emissions by 2050, so that the temperature rise doesn't go beyond 1.5 degrees. This is what everybody is aspiring for. And I'm just trying to put perspective on the numbers. So right now, this 32 billion ton, which is 14,000 million tons of oil equivalent, this is approximately equal to 3,600 gigawatt of renewables. So if you have to save this planet, we should be building this amount of renewables every year. And obviously, there are other things happening. There are nuclear plants, there is hydro, all of that is there. And everybody knows how much solar are we building every year? 150 gigawatt. Let's add wind, maybe 150 megawatt more. So we are building around 300. I meant gigawatt. We are building around 300 gigawatt of renewables approximately every year. How much do we need? More than 3,000. So we are almost short by 90%. So if somebody, and we all know that this thing is going to go up, everybody's hoping that the rate of growth will go up. But imagine one thing, imagine that you have to walk, 100 kilometers in 10 hours. But for the first 90 kilometers, you take, you take all the time, so if we don't grow fast now, we will, although we are going in the right direction, we will not have enough time, to build, to scale up later. So it is very, very important for every country to have their strategy right. Renewables as of now is one way to do it. There are other technologies on which everybody is working. Carbon capture is one, but right now something which is commercially proven is only renewables. So as much as we are able to build, we should build for the next 5 years. And when the new technologies come in, they will only help the cause, right? Then it's not a competition. The gap is so big that actually there is no competition between anybody. Everybody is working towards the same goal. So policies are right, intention is right, we are in the right direction, but we are very slow.
We just need like, I mean, at times 10 from what I'm hearing from you. That is like a huge scale, so much so that I think it may require a complete different overhaul of the way that we're thinking about this problem, actually. Um, okay, let's focus on a different technology because this gives us so much for another conversation, Um,
Yeah.
I remember that back a couple of years ago, we used to talk a lot about, storage. Storage was a big deal, the lithium iron and other technologies as well, but particularly lithium iron was really promising. The price was coming down very fast, much like the PV panels. And we were thinking, okay, that's it. We're getting to the point where, we're going to have solar and wind with storage. However, this is happening, but like I think much less of a pace that we would have expected. Um, so the question is, have we arrived at the time now, as with the prices today, where we can start to say that we're going to see like an exponential amount of solar plus storage or wind plus storage projects? And essentially, what is your prediction for this technology and whether it's going to grow and reduce costs as it was expected beforehand?
Yeah. See, the pace of growth has been a bit slow on this. Ideally, 2 years back, the entire solar storage wind put together, the entire combination should have taken off. But as you said in your previous question, every country is going through a different cycle. If you look at US, more than 50% developments in US are with storage now. So all the plants which are going to get built probably in 2022 onwards, half of them will have storage built in. That's one. There are plants in other parts of the world wherein people are adding new designs on the inverters, which are making their plants future proof, which means using the same plant, they can integrate storage into their systems. Because right now there is no business case, but moving forward there will be new business cases for dispatchability which are going to come in, and some of the smart companies are already integrating those features in their plants. There are new bids happening. South Africa was one example, and the results are expected this month, wherein they didn't care. They just needed power. They needed 2,000 megawatt. They didn't care whether it is gas, solar, wind, or anything else. A lot of bids have gone in with solar wind storage combinations. A lot of bids have also gone in with gas and solar storage combination. So I can only see that I see the winds of changes rather happening in almost every country. Australia is one more country. You have standalone storage coming in Australia. Is it fast enough? No, because there has to be the right policy, there has to be the right economics. If you have to work without subsidies, you have to have the right business case, which now are coming online. So we are in the right direction. Has the cost dropped? Yes, it has been dropping, but probably not at the rate at which it should have dropped. But I think we should not be worried too much on the cost, right? If you look at the cost of power from gas, it is anything between $5 to $8 cents. The cost of power from coal could be very less, but the amount of CO2 which you are putting in the environment is huge, right? Just to capture that carbon back, right now it will cost you around $700 a ton. So the actual cost of electricity from the fossil fuels both CNG as well as coal is very, very high. If you take that into account, we will probably never debate whether solar plus storage or wind has the right cost. We will only debate about the technicalities, whether these technologies can scale and whether they can act as a base load in future or no.
You've opened there like the proverbial the proverbial can of worms, because really, like, the carbon pricing is the problem here, isn't it? A lot of the business cases would work if things were as simple as just putting a price of CO2 emissions. The reality is that we don't have those really, and that's part of the reason why we're still, struggling to scale up as we should. So I suppose you mentioned future proofing, and I wanted to ask you a little bit more about this. If as an industry, um, what are the opportunities now to future proof? That is to find efficiency, to find technologies that give competitiveness to the industry. What are those key points? Where a lot more efficiency can be brought from?
Yeah. So I will only talk about the solar industry. So in solar industry, there are few parts of the value chain. A large part of the value chain is the PV modules itself. A lot of improvement is happening on the PV modules. And this industry shifted from poly to monopoc, from monopoc to bifacial, and within bifacial we are getting better efficiencies every year. And this part of the piece, the PV module, the rest of the components are getting defined. A lot of innovation is happening on the tracking. We have now got companies which can give you technologies which can track clouds. We can track more smarter. This is the way I would like to put it. Then on the inverter side, again, there are incremental improvements happening. So the entire industry is taking, I would say, steps. I don't see any radical innovation happening, at least for the next few years in the industry. But if the industry improves itself by 5-10% only because of technology, plus if you add the scale, and the entire industry would keep on growing. And if somebody has a learning rate of more than 20%, I think it's a fantastic learning rate, right? Every doubling of size, you reduce your cost by 20%. It's a good learning rate to have. And if you look at wind, obviously their learning rates are not as much because it's more mechanical technology. Even for batteries, the learning rate is, I think, in the range of 15%. Yeah, but these are the few things which are happening in the industry. And then if you talk about data, right now we have companies and we are working with some of them. We have a lot of data and we are trying to analyze data, and we are trying to see if we are able to maintain the plants better if using this data. Right now, if the plant is up for 99 point, let's say 4%, using this data, can we make it 99.9%? So these innovations are happening every year in the industry. It's a very young industry, which is being led by a lot of young people. So there is a lot of action happening in the industry right now.
Sounds like a lot of small changes can accumulate to quite a lot. That on the one hand, so it's good to see. And who knows? I mean, as we're deploying more, as you're saying, we're also seeing a change in technologies. You mentioned localization earlier when we were talking about the COVID challenge, and you said that we should rethink where how we localize supply chains and other things. So how do you see this localization affecting the near future and the midterm future of the industry?
See, I feel the localization is one of the very, very important part of this entire growth. If you looked at large gas power plants or coal plants, a lot of people were employed in running these plants. So, solar being a very different technology, you don't need a lot of people to run the plants. So, if everything shifts to solar and wind, in the plant operation phase, you may have less jobs as compared to some of the other technologies. That this is only one part. At the same time, we all know that solar and wind put together, they are going to form a large part of the energy consumption of any country. And if you are depending on these sources for more than 50% of your energy consumption, you would want to localize the industry. You would not want to have a supply chain which is absolutely import oriented. So that's one. Second, in terms of value, since you are able to generate renewables at such a low cost, there is some economic value which is getting generated there. So some of the value will go in building infrastructure, which will be grid infrastructure, and some of the value should also be given to improve the industries. For example, in Saudi Arabia, there is a development going on. People are trying to manufacture inverters or assemble inverters locally, and all of that is happening. If you look at India now, the new modules are being manufactured locally, and there are inverters being manufactured locally. US, you have local modules. So this, if you have to grow big, if the entire industry has to become the mainstream industry, there has to be a good amount of localization. You have to create local jobs. Every country can decide at what level they want to play. For example, UAE, probably UAE doesn't want to go into manufacturing. It probably will have a lot of labs. It will probably have some R&D. So you can decide, depending upon your need of the country, whether you want to generate more jobs or you want to have high-end industry. People can decide, but you cannot have a fully imported supply chain. This will be very tough for any country to imagine, for the sake of security on the energy. The way people used to go behind the oil companies, and they used to reserve their energy needs. For this also, the only way to be a part of the to mitigate your risk would be to play some part in the value chain of this industry. So localization, very important for the growth of the industry, is what we feel.
Yeah, it sounds like what needs to change is a more of the long-term thinking, because up until now, what was happening is it was like the cycles didn't really make it likely that any one company could last, throughout without moving to different countries again, because there was just not enough like foresight. But now there is. I mean, there's only going to be solar and wind, for the future. These are going to be the cheapest ways to produce energy. Therefore, it stands to reason that having like a panel manufacturing facility or whatever else actually would be like a growth business over time. So it's an interesting change. Actually, it changed, it's ever so slightly, right, but it changed quite a lot as well at the same time. So I'm going to ask you now the three most important trends, markets if you like, but trends mainly, in renewable energy or solar energy in the next 5 years. This is a hard question because 5 years is a long time for solar.
Yeah. So I would say the biggest trend which I'm seeing, and we spoke a bit about it in the last question, it is on the dispatchability. So right now, solar treats the grid as I would say, as a dumping yard. You generate and you just dump it into the grid. Till now, the grids were all vast. The penetration of solar was very less. It could take it. But as we move forward, grid is going to become a precious resource. In order to ensure that you're not you are utilizing the grid efficiently, you will have to make your power dispatchable. So big trend, and already baby steps have been taken. Next 5 years, we will see a lot of plants which would be giving us dispatchable power. That's one. Second, there is a lot of focus on automation and big data. We spoke a bit about automation. The plants are going to be operated, through use of a lot of robots. The plants will have a very few people working actually inside the plants. We will be getting a lot of data from all the equipments. All the equipments now have got sensors, and we will be able to analyze that data, and we will be able to run these plant efficiently. So this entire theme is going to pan out and unveil itself in the next few years. And the third is localization. We spoke a bit about it, but localization is going to be very important. More and more countries are going to insist on some kind of localization as a part of their overall growth. So these are the three things which I feel are going to define the solar industry for the coming years.
Yeah, it sounds like we've gone from being energy importers in general, right? Importing oil and gas to actually produce our energy, but importing the technology. And now it has to kind of be recalibrated again to be a situation where we again produce at least a part of that technology. So, like, definitely I see that trend, same as you, because okay, and the last question for today, in also very interesting and trendy one, is about renewable hydrogen. And the question I'd like to ask, and this is whether it's currently underrated or is currently overrated, and just a bit about what do you see as the challenges and the opportunities for the next few years for this technology.
So number one, since it is green hydrogen, we obviously see this as an opportunity. If you have to produce this hydrogen, and you have to produce this hydrogen without carbon emissions, which is the basic intent, you can only do it with the green sources of electricity. It could be solar, it could be wind. So it is an opportunity for sure. Are we there yet? Is it overhyped? I can only say that right now, from the commercial perspective, if the CNG is between $7 to $8 per MMBTU, green hydrogen would be more than $30. So there's a lot of ground which green hydrogen has to cover, which it will cover, I'm sure, the kind of focus it has got in the last few years. But I expect that for green hydrogen to become mainstream, it will take, I would say, 7 to 10 years for that to happen. But again, nothing happens in one day. So right now, I guess the green hydrogen industry is taking all the right steps. Technology is being developed. We have more research going on the electrolyzers, and on the other side, on the consumption side, there are companies which are coming up, which we can use the same pipelines which are being used for gas, for hydrogen also. So if you look at the value chain, every part of the value chain, there are changes happening, and after some time everything is going to fall in place, and as the scale goes up, the cost of hydrogen has to come down. And to be very honest, apart from nuclear, right now, at least I'm not aware about any commercially available technology which can do this. So we have to all pool in. So as a part of the solar industry, we have to ensure that we stay competitive and we bring our cost of production of electricity, down in a sustainable manner. Similarly, the rest of the industry has to play its role. So we are excited. Right now, we do not have a lot of opportunities as a company in that segment, but I'm very sure that a lot of the new door for such opportunities is going to be open for us in the next few years.
I mean, so connected, right? Renewable hydrogen is going to need a lot more renewable energy. And at the beginning, there was a question of whether it like pushed away the need for storage. But I mean, short term, it needs 24/7 energy. Well, maybe not all of it, but some of the processes will need. So we will see. I mean, what is clear is like it's a complete reshuffle again. It's like we're going through a transition and things have changed, but they change within what was already there, and now they're changing completely. There's been a rewrite, like a new business model altogether. So it's very exciting, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you, because that you're surprised that I didn't ask?
I think no, you have covered most of the ground.
I have covered a lot of ground. That's true. Well, thank you very much. It was great talking to you and really getting an idea of what the leaders in the companies that are actually at the moment like in the leadership of the industry, right? That you are present in all of the markets pretty much. You're the largest solar EPC, and what you're thinking and how you are organizing yourselves for growth. So it was great to learn from you. I just wish there was quite as much organization in the markets, so because I think that the challenge is mighty, and I do agree with you in your assessment that even though we're on our way and we've learned along the way a lot, we're still not quite efficient enough in terms of growth for us to really go to the scale that we need to be. So, Vikas, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for sharing, and we'll check up in a few months and see how you're doing.
Thanks a lot, Belen. Thanks a lot for having me. Thanks a lot for having Sterling and Wilson on your chat today. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you very much. Bye.